You're watching Global News Morning.
A new University of Alberta study suggests that your DNA is not your destiny. It suggests that genetics only contribute 5 to 10% to diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. U of A professor David Wishart and co-author of the study joins us. It's pretty interesting because DNA studies are very big right now, or at least DNA testing. So what are some of the findings that you discovered?
Yeah, it's really interesting. What we found is that we learn about how things are inherited from our parents. Color of your hair, color of your eyes, texture of your hair is something that's inherited. We wanted to look at what happens with regard to disease and whether you inherit certain diseases. And we looked at something like 5,000 different studies, 600 of which qualified, and then we looked at about 200 different diseases or conditions. And we wanted to see what portion of those diseases are inherited from your parents or grandparents. And we found that most aren't. And it sort of suggests that a lot of the testing that you might do if you're looking for a Christmas genetic test is not going to really tell you a whole lot about what your genetic disease destiny is going to be.
So then, is it fair to say that ancestry testing or DNA testing or just getting your health tested to perhaps find out if, you might have any early signs of Alzheimer's, is that as valuable as many may have thought in the past?
No, it's not. I think what we found is that genetic testing is really useful for understanding your background, your ethnicity, what part of the world you come from. It can tell you about certain very special and rare mutations, which are quite important. So there's about 40 of them that are called actionable mutations. And that's what genetic testing can help with. And about 1% of the people, or 2%, will find those. The rest of us, it's not going to tell us a whole lot. It might tell you that maybe there's a couple of genes that might give you a little bit of a risk, but what you have actually is much more control over your destiny with regard to lifestyle, nutrition, staying fit. Those are things that have a much greater influence over your health.
So generally, if, let's say, I have a grandfather that had Alzheimer's or a relative who had diabetes, going to get tested for that or doing anything as a precautionary measure to just know in advance if maybe you have the type of genes that might have that, you cannot find this out from?
No, you can't. I think what you have to do, and be careful on this, is that, for instance, if your grandfather or grandmother and your parents and your brother and sister all had cancer, yes, you probably should. But if you had a great-grandfather or a grandmother who had Alzheimer's, then that's just simply called a spontaneous case, and about 95% of those are spontaneous. It's just a bit of bad luck.
Okay, and what was the biggest surprise when you were doing these studies? I mean, you reviewed a lot of information. Anything that was extremely valuable that you found when you were going through all your findings?
Well, there are lots of conditions we looked at, and some actually do have a fairly strong genetic basis. Things like macular degeneration, which is something that will affect your eyes. Crohn's disease and celiac disease certainly have a genetic component. So those are things that if they run in the family, you should be aware of, and those are certainly something that can be inherited. But most other ones, the big surprise was that there was very, very little genetic contribution, sometimes just 1 and 2 and 3%. Things like that. For diabetes as an example, it just doesn't run in families.
Interesting. So you can't technically predict the future like many thought with a lot of DNA testing.
That's right, unfortunately. We were hoping for something better, and I think that's something that many geneticists were hoping for over the last 15 years. But at another level, it says that DNA isn't your destiny. You have more control over your health than you think.
And that's good news.
It is.
Thank you so much for joining us today, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
And if you would like more information about the study or Professor David Wishart worked on, visit the U of A's website, ualberta.ca/science/news. Then just search DNA or David Wishart. Stay with us. We are right back after the break.